The universe sends these 7 shadow guides before your awakening. There are moments in your life you couldn't explain, but they left a mark so deep, it still pulses when the world gets quiet. People you met only once, but who burned themselves into your memory. Situations that made you question reality itself. That had no clear cause, only a sense that something far bigger was happening behind the scenes. And maybe you've asked yourself, why did I have to meet them? Why did that happen to me, of all people? But the truth is, those moments weren't chaos. They weren't punishment. They were orchestration. They were summoned. And the ones who caused those shifts, they weren't ordinary people. They were shadow guides, sent not to comfort you, but to awaken you. Before any true awakening, before you break through to the next spiritual layer, the universe sends 7 beings into your life. Not angels, not mentors, but shadows. They come wrapped in confusion, dressed as enemies, heartbreakers, deceivers, or even complete strangers. They won't look holy, but they are. These guides are chosen to shatter you in the exact places where your power is sleeping. Their methods are cruel at times, but their purpose is precise. You won't recognize them at first, but later, if you survive them, you'll know exactly who they were. The first shadow guide is what I call the mirror of denial. You meet this person early. It could be a parent, teacher, friend, even your first love.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
And they reflect back the version of you thought you had to be. They reward your masks. They praise your performance. And deep down, something in you starts to ache. Because you're being loved, but only on the condition that you keep parts of yourself buried. You shrink to fit. You silence your knowing. But here's the irony: they aren't trying to hurt you. Their job is to show you how long you can survive disowning your truth. And when the weight of it becomes unbearable, when you finally say, "I can't do this anymore," that's when your real self begins to rise. They didn't free you. You did. But their presence made the lie so heavy, you had no choice but to evolve. The second shadow guide comes disguised as the betrayer. This one is brutal. You trust them. You let them in. You expose your softest underbelly, and they twist the knife. Maybe it's a friend who disappears when you need them most. Maybe it's a lover who says, "I'll never leave," then vanishes when your soul starts growing in ways they can't follow. This betrayal feels like it breaks you. You begin to question your intuition. You doubt your heart. But what you don't see yet is that their betrayal was a surgical strike on your illusions. They didn't destroy you. They dismantled your attachments. They showed you that safety built on someone else's approval is a prison, and their exit, though cruel, is what forces you to finally build within. You stop outsourcing your stability. You begin trusting your own spirit. That's the power they awakened. Then comes the energy thief. They don't always feel bad at first. In fact, they might be charming, fascinating, magnetic. But the more time you spend with them, the more drained you become. Not just tired, but spiritually exhausted. They take without asking. They always need something: your validation, your ideas, your presence, your emotional labor. And at some point you hit a wall. You realize that being around them feels like you're dying a little inside each time. That's the trigger. Because until that moment, you never learned to protect your energy. You thought being good meant being available. You thought being spiritual meant being selfless, but they teach you boundaries through depletion. You start saying no. You start creating distance. You start protecting your field like it's sacred because now you know it is. The energy thief awakens the guardian inside you. The one that says, I love you, but not at the cost of myself. And then, just when you think you've gained some clarity, comes the silent catalyst. This one barely says anything. They may not even stay in your life for long. But they look at you differently. They speak in riddles. They leave you with questions you can't unhear. They come into your world like a whisper, and something about them feels ancient, familiar, strange. You won't understand why, but their presence begins rearranging something inside you. You start dreaming more vividly. Synchronicities increase. Your intuition sharpens. You start thinking thoughts you've never had before. And after they're gone, your life isn't the same. Not because they changed it, but because they activated you. Their energy was a trigger, a reminder. They didn't answer your questions. They brought the questions. And that's how you know you met a real shadow guide. They didn't fix you. They cracked open your own capacity to see. These first 4 guides are the beginning. They are sent to rattle the cage, to strip the surface, to stretch the ego. But there are still 3 more. And those 3? They are the ones that walk straight into your soul and rearrange your foundation. They don't just challenge your identity. They threaten it. But if you can stand in their presence without collapsing, if you can stay conscious through their tests, you'll unlock levels of power most people never access in this lifetime. So before you ask to awaken, before you beg the universe for power, you have to ask yourself, can I handle the weight of the ones who will break me open to give me what I asked for? Because you won't meet these shadow guides when life is easy. You meet them when your soul is ready to evolve at the cost of everything you thought was true. The next part will take you into the final 3 shadow guides, each more intense, more confronting, more alchemizing than the last. The ones who shatter your identity, and why that's the greatest gift you'll ever receive. We rarely recognize the moment our false self begins to die. Not because it's quiet, but because we're screaming too loud to notice. We scream when what we thought we were begins to fall apart, when the labels no longer fit, when the story we've told ourselves about who we are starts to crumble beneath the pressure of truth. This is when the final 3 shadow guides arrive. They are not subtle. They are not polite. They are spiritual wrecking balls, and they are not sent to soften your path. They're sent to end it so a new one can begin. The 5th shadow guide is the ego obliterator. This person often enters your life at the peak of your confidence, when you think you've finally figured things out, when you believe you've healed, grown, arrived. They come in and do one thing: expose your blind spot. And not gently. They hit you right in the softest place, your self-image. They might call out your hypocrisy. They might challenge your identity. They might mock your beliefs. Or worse, they might mirror your shadow so clearly that you start to see just how performative your authenticity really was. And in that moment, your pride takes a hit so hard it feels like annihilation. Most people run. They call this person a narcissist, a hater, a manipulator. But if you're really paying attention, if you're ready, you'll realize that this person just handed you the mirror you were never willing to face. They didn't come to be your enemy. They came to expose the character you were still playing. The version of you that was smart, spiritual, successful, but still rooted in fear, still addicted to approval, still using growth as a performance instead of a path. And when they trigger that collapse, you fall, but something ancient begins to rise in the rubble. The you that doesn't need an audience. The you that doesn't flinch in truth. The you that exists beyond identity. That's what they awaken. Next comes one of the most feared and misunderstood shadow guides of all, the shadow twin. This person is not your enemy. They are your double. The one who carries the same core frequency as you, but has chosen a darker or opposite path. They reflect your power, but they wield it in ways you've been too afraid to. They are seductive, dangerous, magnetic. You hate them and are drawn to them at the same time. They trigger jealousy. They awaken doubt. And they force you to confront the truth. You are not as integrated as you thought. The shadow twin forces you to reconcile with your own duality. They may use manipulation where you use charm. They may stand in their truth while you still shrink. They may embody confidence while you still hide behind humility. And it will drive you crazy, because you see your potential in them, but twisted, contorted, shadowed. And the lesson here is razor sharp. You don't get to avoid your own darkness. You have to own it. Love it. Integrate it. Not to become them, but to reclaim what you've been afraid to claim. The shadow twin doesn't destroy you. They show you the edges of your own power and ask if you're finally ready to hold it. And finally, the seventh and most sacred of them all, the sacred disruptor. You'll only meet this guide once you've already started walking the path of awakening. You've left the old world. You've begun to rebuild. You feel clearer, stronger, more aligned. And just when things feel like they're finally coming together, they arrive. Not as a punishment, but as the final clearing. They might end a relationship you thought was forever. They might rip away an opportunity you believed was your destiny. They might destroy the comfort you had just begun to trust. And your first reaction will be rage, grief, confusion. Why now? Why this? After everything I've already survived. But the answer is in the timing. The sacred disruptor shows up when you've built your new life on 90% alignment and 10% compromise. When you've awakened, but there's still one thread left of who you used to be. One fear still hidden, one attachment still rooted in ego. And so they come, with precision and fire, to burn away what you refuse to surrender. Their presence hurts, but it clears. It cuts, but it liberates. And if you pass this final test, if you let go instead of gripping tighter, you emerge different, lighter, radiant, real, no longer seeking the path, you are the path. No longer hoping for awakening, you embody it. Now I ask you, can you see their faces in your memory? Can you feel them now, in hindsight, woven into the architecture of your transformation? Which one left you broken but made you braver? Which one cracked your pride so your soul could finally breathe? These were not mistakes. These were contracts. Soluble agreements made in the dark, honored in the light. In the next part, we'll explore how to recognize these guides while you're still in the storm, and how to consciously extract the power they're awakening in you without running, resisting, or repeating karmic loops. Reading the storm: how to recognize your shadow guides in real time and extract the power they came to awaken. By the time you're in the middle of a spiritual storm, everything feels chaotic, overwhelming, and painfully unclear. You want to find meaning. You want to know why. But most of us don't recognize our shadow guides until they've already left, until the damage is done. The lesson is tattooed into our chest, and we're left trying to rebuild from the ashes. That's why most people stay in loops for years, meeting different faces but repeating the same soul story. Because they never learn to read the storm while it's still happening. But what if you could? What if you didn't have to wait for hindsight to realize who was sent to trigger your next evolution? Recognizing a shadow guide in real time requires inner stillness while your outer world feels like it's collapsing. That's not easy, but it's possible. And it starts with your body. When a shadow guide enters your field, you feel it before you understand it. There's a subtle but unmistakable charge. Sometimes it feels like tension, sometimes attraction, but sometimes discomfort without logic. Pay attention. Don't rush to label it. Just ask yourself, what is this person's energy awakening in me that I didn't want to look at? Shadow guides don't operate like mentors. They don't give you clear advice or uplifting encouragement. They disorient you. They stir your fears. They press on the parts of you that are unintegrated. And they do it without ever explaining why. Let's say someone shows up and constantly belittles you, even subtly. Your immediate instinct is to defend, argue, cut them off. But pause. Ask deeper, why is this still affecting me? What part of me is still needing their validation to feel whole? If you're fully sovereign, their words would pass right through you. So what is their energy really revealing? That you still outsource your worth, that your confidence is conditional, that your peace is performative. But that's the extraction. That's how you mine gold from pain while it's still raw. You don't wait for the universe to confirm it was a lesson. You declare it one yourself. Now consider the experience of obsession or intense connection. Sometimes you meet someone who feels magnetic, irresistible but confusing. You don't even like them logically, but you can't stop thinking about them. This isn't always romantic. Sometimes it's a strange pull towards someone who activates a deep yearning in your soul. That's not necessarily love. That's a spiritual echo. You've felt them before. They carry a piece of your karma, your past life, your shadow. They're not here to fulfill you, they're here to reflect the part of you that still feels unclaimed. Maybe they embody the freedom you suppress. Maybe they show the dominance you've never allowed yourself. Maybe they're the walking, breathing version of your unlived potential. Don't chase them. Read them. What does their presence say about your own energetic equation? What have you been too afraid to become? Another signal of a shadow guide is disproportionate emotional reaction. You'll know it when it happens. Someone says something simple but it wrecks you. It's not because it was cruel, but because it hit a place inside you that was still unresolved. You feel defensive, shaky, like they've touched a nerve you thought you healed. That's not random. That's an activation. Shadow guides are soul surgeons. They don't use scalpels, they use presence. And when they cut you open like that, you have two choices: react or reflect. The immature path is to blame them, label them, run. The awakened path is to ask, what was touched in me that needed this pain to finally surface? The truth is, the more self-aware you become, the less dramatic your interactions with shadow guides need to be. They don't have to burn your life down, because you'll start to recognize them by vibration, not devastation. You'll feel the lesson arriving before it explodes. And instead of being blindsided, you'll open your arms to it. You'll stand inside the storm and say, I know who you are. I know what you're here for. Let's do this consciously. And that's the shift from victim to vessel, from suffering to strategy. The universe doesn't stop sending shadow guides just because you wake up. It sends more, bigger ones, but now you're not afraid of the storm. You read it like scripture, and each time you extract more power. Each time you integrate more truth. Each time you step closer to becoming the guide for others. In the final part, we will explore how to live after the awakening, how to carry what you've earned, how to walk through life not just healed, but honed, not just wise, but weaponized in truth. Becoming the guide, how to carry what tried to break you and help others through their awakening. When the dust settles and your eyes adjust to the new light you've stepped into, a strange silence arrives. It's not peace, not entirely. It's a silence made of gravity, like something ancient is watching. You're not who you used to be, and you feel it not as a celebration, but as a responsibility. Because once you've met all 7 shadow guides, once you've cracked and collapsed and clawed your way back from spiritual annihilation, you become something else entirely. You become the thing others will one day meet and not understand. You become the guide. But here's what no one tells you. The hardest part isn't surviving your shadow guides. The hardest part is carrying the wisdom they left you without turning bitter, superior, or silent. It's learning how to hold your story like a key, not a wound. It's learning how to speak truth without preaching. It's knowing exactly what someone is going through because you've been there and resisting the urge to save them. Because saving someone before they're ready robs them of their own transformation. And you know that now. Because no one saved you. You had to bleed for it, burn for it, break for it. And that's why your power is real. It wasn't given, it was forged. So how do you walk through the world after this kind of awakening? You become paradoxical. You carry scars, but you don't lead with them. You've seen through people, but you don't judge. You feel everything, but you're no longer overwhelmed. You have the capacity to destroy, but you choose to build. Your power is quiet, not because it's weak, but because it no longer needs to prove itself. And this silence, it draws people. They won't know why, but they'll just feel safer, clearer, or strangely shaken in your presence. Some will love you. Some will run from you. But almost all of them will feel changed after meeting you. You become what others don't even know they're looking for. Not a teacher, not a guru, not a leader. It's just a mirror with memory. A guide who doesn't give directions, but creates the space for people to find their own path. You'll notice this shift when someone tells you, just being around you makes me see myself more clearly. That's the mark. You're not dazzling them. You're reminding them. You've become what your own shadow guides were, except now you're doing it consciously, with heart, with reverence. But there's still one final test, because even as you rise, life will still send people who try to reduce you, to pull you back into roles you've outgrown, to tempt you to soften your truth so others can feel comfortable. And you'll have to decide, will I dilute what I've become to be accepted by the version of the world that existed before I awakened? Or will I stay solid, even if it means walking alone for a while longer? This is where you move from activated to anchored. You don't flinch. You don't explain. You don't lower your frequency to meet someone. You stand firm and let them rise or walk away. And both responses are sacred. Because now you understand, Awakening isn't about being special. It's about being real. It's about becoming so authentic that others start remembering their own truth just by witnessing yours. And that changes everything. You don't chase your mission anymore. You become it. In how you breathe, in how you pause, in how you no longer seek control, just alignment. You don't need followers. You don't need a platform. You are the temple. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start to feel when someone else is ready. You'll see the flicker in their eyes, and the weight in their aura, the longing to break free from whatever illusion still has them trapped. And you'll recognize the version of yourself you used to be. But instead of saving them, you'll simply hold the door open. Maybe you'll say something, maybe you won't. Maybe your silence will speak louder than words ever could. Because now you know, the universe doesn't need you to be loud. It needs you to be true. So let me leave you with this final question, the one your soul has been circling around since your first shadow guide arrived. What if your pain was never a punishment, but preparation? What if every person who cracked you open was sent so that one day you could carry the kind of presence that cracks others open too, without hurting them, without saving them, but just by standing fully in your own frequency? Because if you've made it here through the fire, through the forgetting, through the 7, you're no longer on the path. You are the path. And the next guide someone meets, it might just be you.